When we picture St. John Vianney, we often imagine the long lines of penitents outside the church of Ars, the hours he spent kneeling before the tabernacle, the saint who would become the patron of parish priests. But the curé of Ars did not appear in that confessional fully formed. Before Ars, before seminary, before he could even read, there was a home in Dardilly. There was a mother and father, brothers and sisters, work in the fields, evening prayers, and the quiet, repeated rhythms of Catholic life. In the gospel we just heard, Jesus approaches Simon Peter at the shore of Lake Gennesaret. The call is deeply personal. Jesus enters his boat, speaks to his heart, and Peter must make his own act of trust. Right? At your word, I will let down the nets. Yet this personal call unfolds within a web of relationships. James and John are nearby. Partners rush to help when the nets break. Two boats share the weight of the miraculous catch. Peter will leave everything to follow Christ, but he does not follow as an isolated individual. He follows as one who has been prepared by the ordinary faith of hardworking people who knew how to recognize the voice of the Lord. This is where every vocation begins. God addresses the human heart personally, but he nearly always uses other people to prepare that heart. Someone teaches us to make the sign of the cross. Someone brings us to Mass. Someone answers our questions about God. Someone notices a gift before we know how to name it. The Lord calls from the shore, but very often a family has already taught us how to hear his voice. Jean-Marie Vianney was born in 1786 on the eve of the French Revolution. I'm sure for many faithful at this time, they would sound very much like some of us do today. Oh, it could never get worse than this. The world around him would soon become hostile to the church. Priests were hunted, churches closed, the sacraments driven underground. In that darkness, the Vianney home became what the church calls truly a domestic church, a place where the lamp of faith kept burning. Prayer continued. The poor were welcome. Faithful priests found refuge. Young Jean-Marie made his first communion in secret, while farm carts and loads of hay concealed what was happening inside. Imagine what this taught him. The Eucharist was not casual. The sacraments were treasures for which adults took risks. Now, his family could not change the government, but they could keep the faith alive in their home. And so they wove holiness into the repetition of ordinary life. Right? Regular prayers, work, meals, small sacrifices. His mother, Marie, paid close attention to his spiritual life. Tradition tells us she offered him to God and the Blessed Virgin, desiring that he might serve at the altar. See, this was not a parent controlling a child's future, but a mother's surrender. this child ultimately belongs to God. Lord, not my will, but thine be done. The Vianney family also practiced hospitality in a way that formed Jean-Marie's priestly heart. Years before his birth, his grandfather had welcomed a dirty, wandering beggar named Benedict Joseph Labrie, only later recognized as a saint. They opened the door not because the stranger had a reputation, but because he possessed dignity, as any other human being does. This charity became part of Jean-Marie's spiritual inheritance. And later, as a pastor of ours, he would see every sinner, not as an interruption, but as a person for whom Christ died. Now, we must not romanticize the Vianney household. Rural life was hard. Resources were limited. Jean-Marie's studies created practical difficulties because his labor was needed on the farm. Even devout families experience tension and fear. But the gospel does not promise that faithful homes will be free from wounds. It promises that grace can work within human weakness. So tonight, as we begin this novena, we place before the Lord every family represented here, within our parish, within our greater community, right? Joyful families, struggling families, grieving families, families trying quietly to remain faithful. We ask that our homes become places where Christ is welcomed into the boat, where his word is trusted, and where each person learns to listen for the voice that says, put out into the deep. The deepest gift the Vianney family gave their son was not a career plan. They gave him a world in which God could be heard. Prayer made silence familiar. Charity made sacrifice intelligible. His mother's surrender taught him that life belongs to God. This is why the support and faith of the family matters so much for vocations. The goal is not that every child becomes a priest or religious, although selfishly. It would do well, to keep the boss happy. No, the goal is that every child become free enough to ask, Lord, what do you desire? A home succeeds spiritually when children know that holiness is possible, that God's will is good, and that no honest calling from the Lord needs to be feared. Peter's boat became a pulpit because he allowed Jesus to enter it. His failure became abundance because he obeyed the word of Christ. So in a way, the ordinary Christian home can become a place from which grace reaches far beyond anything the family can see. So as we pray this novena, beginning tonight into all these 9 days, praying for this novena for vocations, let's ask Jean-Marie Vianney, the good saint, to intercede for our families, however they may look like, wherever they may be at this very moment. Pray for them, intercede for them, that they may be places where faith is nurtured, where vocations are welcomed, and where every son and daughter learns to recognize the voice of the Good Shepherd.